Welcome, everybody, to Recovery Machine. My name's Nathan, joined as always by co-host Corey. All right, so the next thing we wanted to talk about was our CBC interviews that we did. We did 3 separate interviews that were based generally on the podcast, I guess, how we got started, our backgrounds they wanted to know about, and they seemed to be interested in our take on the Safer Supply Initiative in BC. So we did those interviews. It was a great experience. We're grateful to have had the opportunity. And although it wasn't a lot of time to discuss the issues, we felt that we used our time to the best of our ability, given what we knew about the interviews. And so we were happy with that. An article was published that kind of amalgamated all the information that we went over and the questions that we were asked and our subsequent answers. And of course, when CBC put the article up there, I think they give it a certain amount of time where the comment section is open. And I didn't read those comments, but Corey went through them, and I think we got eviscerated was the feeling that I got from some of the things you told me about. So I guess the experience is interesting in that your reaction to reading those comments, I thought was valuable. And so I'd ask you about that, I guess. I mean, what was it like discovering that comment section, getting kind of pulled into it and going through comment by comment, and how did that feel? And tell us about that experience.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first, the experience of doing the interviews, preparing for that, took a lot of energy, a lot of emotional energy. You know, there was a lot of not doubt, but I think I really wanted to try to just be in control of my words and what the message we were trying to send was, because particularly in our position, probably more so for you because you still have a license as a pharmacist, but for me, not having a license, I had less to lose there. But what we are saying is pretty new information. It's hasn't been said a lot, and we've heard there have been healthcare workers come forward. There have been other articles about the healthcare workers' experience with mandatory treatment. Their CBC has looked at that. But I felt like we were putting our necks out there a little bit.
Sure.
And exposing ourselves to, in my case, members of my community, former coworkers, that sort of thing. And so I was just very aware of that. And in reading, going online and reading the comment section on the article, because there's no feedback from the radio unless it was people that reached out to us or people in our lives that commented. Mm-hmm. But in reading the comments online, it was initially pretty deflating, to say the least. Pretty, not just deflating on a personal level, because the comments were very hateful towards us, towards me, it seemed like in particular. And it was very clear that how politicized this issue is and how divisive this issue is. And
would you say that you were disappointed with people's understanding?
Oh yeah, I think disappointed in people's understanding about safe supply, and the position and lack of understanding about people who are dying from overdose deaths, and the insensitivity towards people's family and friends.
Right.
The complete lack of understanding towards healthcare workers or professionals or people in trusted professions who have a crack in their veneer of mental health or who use a substance.
Yeah, not a lot of tolerance for humanity there, right?
Oh no. And I mean, so
and keeping in mind, we are aware that any comment section is going to be, I mean, the people who comment on sites like this are usually very polarized. It's either going to be we love what you're saying, please continue, or we hate what you're saying, you're destroying the world. So there's that aspect. And then there's a certain amount of trolling that goes on too, which is, I mean, it can be entertaining, but when you're talking about an issue like this, I think the more serious the issue is, the crazier the trolls get sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Where they
Yeah. And there were, and you're right. First of all, there were a couple of some individuals that were, standing up not in our defense, but in defense of safe supply, in defense of recovery and all sorts of valuable things. But yeah, it was a very small population of people doing the sort of the hate speech or the hateful comments. But I don't have the comments in front of me here, but a couple of them that come to mind were, first of all, the comment of how much of these guys paid the CBC to allow them this exposure. When we did not pay the CBC.
That was our goal from setting out. We had to get on CBC, and we were willing to pay
our $0 budget. We really pushed it forward and bought out the CBC.
That's right.
And then comments about, that you and I should be in jail, that we are criminal junkies. And so,
not the first time I've heard that one.
No. So having people around me really check, give me reassurance and giving me support. And I intellectually know that these are, people that are either with limited experience or are, fairly conservative leaning. I could come up with all sorts of reasonable justification for why they are saying the things that they're saying, and I could explain it and rationalize it and then try to brush it off. But what I really found, and what I shared with you and with our community, was that it still generated a sensation of shame, a physical sensation of shame. And we've talked about that is very much like a feeling of tension, a feeling of like embarrassment, feeling hot in the face, feeling kind of like angry and heightened. And what I had said to you was that, and there were 700 plus comments on that article. So whether it's coming from 700 mostly negative comments or whether it's coming from one negative interaction with a manager or with a person at human resources or a person from an insurance company, it lands the same. I really realized that, like, the scale of shame, it was the same. It was generating the same feeling within me. And even as far as I consider myself to have come, I think what I did realize is that I was able to support myself and kind of discard that shame much more quickly than I could when I first went off work, and some of the conversations I had with my employer and HR and stuff like that, where that shame would have lingered for days and it would have kept me up at night.
Yeah.
But shame is shame. And it's like, it does the same kind of a thing internally.
Right. So can you imagine, for whatever circumstances, if obviously you wouldn't do an interview like this the day after, you got that call from your employer or whatever.
No.
But can you imagine the impact of something public to that scale on your psyche, a year and a half, 2 years ago?
For sure.
In comparison to now. Like, I mean, quite honestly, it literally does nothing to me. Like, I find it amusing, and I find it, the part that was disturbing to me was I was a little shocked at the level of misunderstanding, as far as, like, I thought maybe there'd be a little more, people the understanding of the problem, and the understanding of the reality of what needs to be done would be a little higher. That was shocking. And like you said, disheartening. I mean, the ones you pointed out there, I just thought, like, wow, that is, if they're not trolling, and some of those people are obviously not trolling, but that it would be a strange world to live in if that's the way you thought about things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that part was a little tough for me to wrap my head around. But as far as the shame part, there was no, like, But then again, I didn't. Maybe if I went through and I read the whole list, I would.
Yeah,
it would get
for
me,
sure.
you know.